The Galactic Concord, a council of ancient and highly advanced alien civilizations, had long believed there were no surprises left in the universe. For thousands of cycles, they had mapped stars, catalogued life forms, and brought order to countless worlds. But that belief changed the day they intercepted a strange, repeating signal from an unregistered system far beyond the outer rim, a tiny, overlooked place called Sol. The signal wasn't a distress call or a formal message. It was music. Strange patterns of sound and rhythm, interlaced with what appeared to be laughter, explosions, and, most confusing of all, small furry creatures making odd vocalizations. The signal grew in strength and variety, and soon fragments of video began slipping through the Concord's network. Images of people dancing, shouting, crying, smiling, and yes, hundreds of videos of cats doing bizarre things. The data shouldn't have been able to breach Concord firewalls, yet it did, slipping through encrypted channels like water through cracks in stone. Perplexed, the Council dispatched the Zolvek, a mid-range scout vessel led by Commander Yelksan, a cautious but curious Trelvari known for her level-headed approach to new discoveries. As the ship approached the pale blue dot marked Earth, its crew expected to find primitive beings still struggling with basic technology. What they saw instead made them pause. Satellites cluttered the planet's orbit, space stations spun slowly in low orbit, and digital traffic buzzed across the spectrum in a chaotic, uncontrolled storm. Earth looked like a mess. But underneath the noise was something stranger: coordination. Not the kind seen in galactic superpowers, but a fast-moving, creative, unpredictable kind. The humans had no unified world government, no central space authority, and yet they had managed to send messages across light years, build spacefaring equipment, and develop something they called the Internet. A chaotic data swamp overflowing with everything from cooking tutorials to war footage. The scout crew didn't know what to make of it. One moment, they watched humans launching satellites with celebratory cheers. The next, they were watching them argue fiercely over pineapple on pizza. Commander Yelksen ordered deeper scans, but the results raised more questions. These beings had survived multiple global conflicts, environmental disasters, and internal chaos, and somehow they still moved forward, stronger than before. Even more unsettling, within just weeks of their signals being detected, human-made probes began to respond to Concord encryption attempts, mimicking them, and in some cases, decoding simple protocols no foreign species had ever broken. "They are watching us," whispered one technician. But how? No probes had been detected in Concord space, yet something, or someone, was definitely listening. The crew began compiling their report, but before they could send it, one of the scouts intercepted a live video stream from Earth, a group of humans reacting to the possibility of alien life. They were laughing, theorizing, drawing art, even writing stories about how first contact might happen. Most alarming was how casually they imagined meeting godlike alien beings, not with fear, but with humor, curiosity, and sometimes snacks. Yuxam couldn't decide if it was arrogance or innocence. Either way, it was unsettling. She sent an encrypted message back to Concord Command. Species identified: Homo sapiens. Technologically chaotic, behaviorally unpredictable, emotionally volatile, unafraid of the unknown. Potential threat level: unclear. Recommend observation and caution. For a while, silence followed. Then a single word began circulating among council halls, whispered with a mix of curiosity and growing concern: humans. That's when the galaxy began to take notice. Not because of their power, their technology, or their armies, but because humans didn't seem to realize how strange they were. And that was what made them truly dangerous. Envoy Kethrel of the Varelian Diplomatic Corps had met over 70 alien species in his lifetime, from gas-breathing giants to telepathic insect colonies, but nothing had prepared him for the strange, contradictory race called humans. After reviewing the Zolvek scout report, he personally volunteered to make first contact, convinced the council was overreacting. To him, The humans seemed eccentric at best, possibly reckless, but ultimately harmless. More like unruly children than a galactic threat. The idea that such a chaotic and emotionally driven species could pose any real danger made him smirk. Disguised in a biosimulated humanoid avatar built to appear friendly and non-threatening, Kethrel landed on Earth near the United Nations Ortal Station, where diplomatic exchanges were being coordinated. A meeting was quickly arranged with one of Earth's representatives, a woman named Captain Amelia Ruse of the UN Space Division. She was a calm, confident figure with a practical uniform and a no-nonsense attitude, greeting Kethrel with a polite handshake and a warm smile. The two sat across from each other in a small conference room aboard the station, surrounded by Earth flags, display screens, and a surprisingly large coffee machine. The conversation began in a standard tone, both parties exchanging cultural details, technological data, and peaceful intentions. Kethrel asked carefully chosen questions, trying to assess the true nature of humanity. Ruse answered honestly, often with a casual tone that confused the envoy. It wasn't until she started describing human history that the translator unit began to glitch. She spoke of global wars that had killed millions, disasters that reshaped continents, and dark decades where humanity nearly wiped itself out, not once, but 5 different times. Each time, they came back stronger, more determined, as if failure only fueled their evolution. When she mentioned that humans had colonized a barren moon just to prove it could be done, and once used duct tape and a wrench to stop a meltdown in a failing nuclear reactor, the translator froze completely, unable to process her words. Kethrel stared at her, blinking slowly, unsure if she was joking. Ruse simply sipped her coffee and nodded, as if such things were entirely normal. She explained that humans didn't see danger the way others did. They approached it with creativity, stubbornness, and a strange sense of humor. She talked about how humans had explored the ocean before understanding how pressure worked, how they flew before understanding the full science of aerodynamics, and how they sent messages to space decades before knowing if anyone would listen. Kethrel sat frozen, his mind racing. These weren't stories of a reckless species, they were stories of survivors. A race that saw the impossible as a challenge, not a warning. He asked her, with genuine confusion, why they kept doing such dangerous things. Ruse just shrugged and said, because someone has to try. And if we don't, who will? That simple answer sent a chill through the envoy's synthetic skin. The meeting ended with formal goodbyes and the usual exchange of cultural tokens. Berth offered a book, a flag, and oddly, a chocolate bar. But as Kethrel returned to his ship, he no longer saw humans as curious or amusing. They had looked extinction in the face more than once, and instead of crumbling, they laughed, learned, and tried again. On the flight back to Concord space, Kethrel recorded a new report. His voice was quiet, uncertain, almost shaken. Initial assessment incorrect. Humans are not harmless. Their resilience is unnatural. Their logic is flexible. Their courage borders on madness. I do not believe they fully understand what they are, and that may be the most dangerous trait of all. He ended the report with a final warning, one that would echo in Concord chambers for years to come. Proceed with caution. These beings are not like us. They are not guided by fear. They are guided by will. When Envoy Kethrel returned to Concord space, he submitted his official report with calm words and careful language. He labeled humanity under the category of mild curiosity, noting their unpredictable nature, emotional resilience, and strange approach to survival. The council, made up of dozens of ancient species who had long mastered the art of cautious observation, reviewed the report without panic. On the surface, humans appeared chaotic, but not yet threatening, a young species still limited in reach, their technology primitive by Concord standards, their civilization fractured across nations and ideologies. But then the Science Division asked for access to Earth's global data network, curious to know more. That's when the trouble began. As researchers across the galaxy began to dig deeper into human behavior, the reports shifted from mild interest to cautious alarm. One team stumbled upon something called base jumping, a voluntary activity where humans leaped off cliffs and buildings with little more than fabric strapped to their backs. Another analyst found shark cage diving, where humans deliberately lowered themselves into the ocean to observe one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy's known biomes, for fun. The deeper they looked, the stranger it got. Sports like boxing and rugby, where humans willingly inflicted damage on each other for entertainment, were considered normal. One cultural expert discovered a video game that simulated warfare with disturbing accuracy, played by children and adults alike. A historical analyst reviewing 20th century Earth events came across something called World War II, and after reading about the scale of destruction, the firebombings, the invention and use of atomic weapons, and the cold logic behind strategic decisions, the analyst reportedly fainted and required neurological treatment. In one corner of the Concorde archives, a technician quietly ran a systems comparison and discovered that the first human missions to their moon were done with less computational power than the average galactic toaster drone. And yet, they succeeded, not once, but several times, using manual calculations, rudimentary electronics, and an almost reckless confidence. They had landed on a dead rock in space and returned safely, driven not by survival, but by sheer determination. More concerning was humanity's response to fear. Most species, when faced with unknowns, responded with hesitation or retreat. Humans responded with exploration, humor, or fire. When cornered, they didn't surrender, they adapted. One file described a group of humans trapped in an Arctic crash site for over a month. They survived by building shelters from the wreckage, melting ice with body heat, and eventually walking across frozen land to find help, singing to stay sane. Another file contained a quote repeated in several places: "When you're going through hell, keep going." The words sent ripples of discomfort through many Concorde officials. What kind of species turns suffering into motivation? Despite the alarming discoveries, the Concorde didn't act. The Council voted to continue observation, assuming humanity's limited range would contain them. After all, Earth had not yet reached deep space. Their colonies were few, and their species still squabbled over borders and beliefs. One senior elder remarked, "They are dangerous, yes, but disorganized. Their fire will burn only their own house." And so, humanity remained unclassified as a threat, kept under distant watch, filed away in the galactic records with a quiet note: potential for instability, unusual risk tolerance, behavioral anomalies noted. But among the data scientists and quiet watchers of the galaxy, a new phrase began to emerge. It was not written in official files, nor spoken in formal meetings, but whispered in corners and passed between those who read too deeply. The phrase was simple, unsettling, and carried a weight no one wanted to admit. They do not know what they are. Just months after the initial contact files were finalized and carefully buried under layers of diplomatic red tape, the Concorde's early warning systems picked up something unexpected. A massive vessel moving through deep space, flying under no known galactic code, yet broadcasting a clear signal in over 50 dialects. This is the UNSS Dauntless, a peaceful generational ship from Earth. We come to settle, assist, and learn, requesting permission for surface entry on neutral territory. At first, the message was dismissed as a technical error. Earth wasn't supposed to have ships capable of that range, certainly not without Concorde knowledge. But scans confirmed it: a real, self-sustaining human vessel, moving with slow, deliberate purpose toward a mid-tier neutral planet named Virelon 3, a world governed by a local council and loosely affiliated with the Concorde. The ship was enormous, bulky in design, lacking elegance or advanced cloaking, but somehow held together with layers of armor, solar sails, and improvised repair drones. No weapons were detected, no warships followed. When the Virelon Council received word, panic broke out. They assumed an invasion, Why else would a species known for survival instincts and unpredictable behavior send such a vessel to their doorstep? Military reinforcement was requested immediately, but when Concord Command investigated further, the passenger list from the Dauntless only deepened the confusion. There were no soldiers aboard, no officers, no strategic minds, just farmers, engineers, doctors, architects, teachers, and children. Over 20,000 humans, all carefully selected not for combat, but for their ability to build, teach, heal, and grow. They're colonizing a planet, with gardeners. One analyst muttered in disbelief. The concept didn't fit any known patterns. Colonization in the galaxy was usually done with military precision or economic motives. But here were humans, bringing soil samples, irrigation tech, books, music instruments, even small greenhouses. The Varellans, already on edge from the earlier reports about human history, didn't know whether to laugh or sound the alarms. Their planet had never seen conflict in centuries, and now it faced a potential cultural invasion from a race that had survived extinction multiple times and thought duct tape was a universal tool. Concord Command held an emergency session to discuss the Earthling problem. Several species proposed turning the ship away. Others feared doing so might insult or provoke the unpredictable newcomers. After hours of heated debate, the final decision came with the usual calm arrogance of ancient powers. Let's observe. These are just humans after all. The Dauntless was granted limited entry to the outer regions of Varellon 3 under close supervision. The humans responded with gratitude and immediately began setting up their settlement, not with conquest, but with cooperation. They offered to help repair Virelian water systems, introduced new methods for crop rotation, and even began constructing shared learning centers. Their children played with local Varellon young without hesitation. The humans worked long hours, sang songs while building and cooked meals for their neighbors. No one understood how or why, but the local economy began to improve. Trade routes expanded. Even weather control units saw efficiency upgrades after a human engineer suggested rerouting a processor through an old capacitor, something no Varellon had dared try. Still, unease grew in the background. Reports started coming in from observers, noting how the humans adapted to everything, from local climate to strange gravity. They learned languages faster than expected. They made jokes, shared stories, and slowly made themselves essential. The Varellon Council, once fearful of invasion, now feared something stranger: assimilation. Humanity wasn't forcing its way into the world, it was becoming part of it. And the most unsettling part, they didn't seem to know the power of what they were doing. No demands, no threats, just smiles, hard work, and a presence that quietly shifted everything around them. Watching from a distance, one Concord official whispered to another, "They didn't bring weapons, but are still taking over, and they don't even realize it." When the Dauntless finally touched down on the southern plains of Varellon 3, the humans disembarked with smiles, toolkits, and not a single weapon in sight. There were no banners, no grand speeches, only quiet handshakes, introductions, and an immediate focus on the work ahead. With simple tools and boundless determination, they began building. Roads were carved, irrigation lines extended, solar fields erected, and wind turbines spun in places where no energy had flowed before. The humans offered water purification systems as gifts, not trades, and turned arid land into fertile ground within weeks. Where bureaucratic debates would have stalled progress for years, the humans simply got things done. They fixed broken infrastructure the locals had long given up on, upgraded power grids, and connected isolated communities with improvised transport routes. The Varellans watched with wide eyes as the humans worked without complaint, treating labor as a shared purpose, not a burden. Teachers set up classrooms beneath open skies, engineers shared blueprints, and children ran laughing through markets filled with both earth-grown produce and native crops. A quiet merging of two worlds. In under 6 months, the entire economic system of Varellon 3 transformed. Small towns became thriving hubs, trade increased, and for the first time in decades, the Varellans saw a drop in unemployment, disease, and hunger. Admiration grew rapidly, but beneath it, a quiet unease lingered. These newcomers weren't politicians or strategists, just regular people who had, somehow, changed everything. The turning point came unexpectedly during a mining expansion project in the northern mountains. Humans, assisting with excavation, accidentally breached a deep, unstable cavern that had been sealed for generations. Within hours, something ancient and furious emerged. A massive subterranean predator with armored skin, tentacle-like limbs, and the strength to crush transports in a single blow. Panic tore through nearby settlements. The Varellan authorities scrambled to respond, but their emergency systems were outdated and their defense units too far away. By the time they began to coordinate a response, the humans had already moved. Without waiting for permission or command, construction teams dropped their tools and rearmed themselves with whatever they could find. Plasma welders turned into cutting beams, mining drones reprogrammed for defense, forklifts retrofitted to carry improvised explosives. They communicated in short, calm bursts, using simple code words and hand signals. In less than an hour, they had created a trap. One team distracted the creature using floodlights and heavy machinery, while another lured it into a narrow valley rigged with high-pressure fuel tanks. With precision honed not in military schools, but through decades of chaotic human problem-solving, they detonated the trap and brought the beast down, without losing a single civilian. Dozens of lives were saved. The alien city that lay in the creature's path remained untouched. It was only afterward that the humans explained what they'd done, and even then, they downplayed it. Just reacted, one said with a shrug, "We've handled worse." Another, when asked how they managed to organize so quickly, replied with a grin, group chat, and duct tape. The incident was recorded on viral and public networks and quickly spread across the Concord systems. Footage showed unarmored humans charging toward the beast with sparks flying and engines roaring. The galaxy watched, stunned, as a group of supposed settlers turned a disaster into a coordinated rescue operation without any formal chain of command. What shocked the Concord most wasn't the victory, it was the ease. No hesitation, no fear, no applause-seeking, just instinct, experience, and action. The phrase echoed across galactic media outlets and council chambers alike. They weren't even trying. Suddenly, the label of harmless settlers didn't fit anymore. The humans hadn't come to conquer, but they had become impossible to ignore. Their strength didn't lie in weapons or numbers. It was in their reaction to crisis, their refusal to break, and their terrifying ability to turn chaos into control without waiting to be told how. And the galaxy began to understand something it had missed before. Humans didn't need to be a threat to be dangerous. They just needed to be there. The footage from Varellon 3 hit the Concord like a silent bomb. No flames, no explosions, just the undeniable weight of realization. Across council chambers and encrypted networks, leaders of ancient and powerful civilizations watch humans, dressed in dusty work clothes, defeating a subterranean monster with salvaged equipment and construction drones. No formal military, no protocol, no hesitation, just ordinary people doing the impossible as if it were part of their daily routine. And when the danger passed, they went back to fixing pipes and planting gardens. That was what truly shook the galaxy. The panic began not with shouting, but with silence. In the high chamber of the Concord, where voices of hundreds of species once echoed with diplomacy and science, no one spoke for several minutes after the broadcast ended. Representatives shifted in their seats, exchanged looks, and rechecked the report as if hoping it was all some misunderstanding. But it wasn't. These weren't elite Earth warriors. They were settlers, civilians. And if this was what humans did when they were just being helpful, the question no one wanted to ask now hung in the air like a shadow. What happens when they're angry? A special emergency session was called. For the first time in decades, every major Concord race was present. Even the usually silent Arzenth came out of hibernation to attend. Debates erupted. Some delegates proposed isolation, arguing that human expansion must be stopped before it reached more systems. Others insisted that humanity should be studied, carefully watched, maybe even guided. A few suggested immediate alliance, pointing out the potential benefits of human adaptability and innovation. But no one could deny the truth anymore. Humanity had changed the balance, not by force, but by simply being themselves. They had no master plan, no empire, no fleets waiting behind the stars. They had only brought their stubbornness, their curiosity, their creativity, and the tendency to treat every disaster like a puzzle to be solved. The chamber split evenly. Half wanted distance, half wanted diplomacy. The votes stalled, locked in a dead heat, until a new report came in. It was small, almost insignificant compared to the monster incident, but it spread faster than the previous one. On Varellum 3, the human settlers had expanded their work. Now, they were rebuilding ancient ruins, once thought lost to time, carefully preserving local history side by side with Varellon archaeologists. In the evenings, human engineers were teaching alien children how to code, using bright interfaces and simple logic puzzles, laughing with them, challenging them to think in ways even their own schools hadn't attempted. And then there was the paintball arena. Built in a repurposed warehouse, it had become wildly popular among both humans and aliens. But this wasn't just play, it was organized, strategic, and incredibly educational. The humans called it tactical training disguised as fun. Children learned flanking, teamwork, communication under pressure, all through a colorful game that left everyone laughing, even as they unknowingly practiced small unit combat strategy. That was the final straw. The council chamber fell into stunned silence again. The humans weren't just surviving, they were spreading, teaching, sharing, transforming. Not with speeches, but by simply inviting others to join them. It wasn't a plan. It was just who they were. That's when Elder Veleran, a being whose lifespan had outlasted star systems, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but cut through the room like a knife through still air. The most terrifying thing about humans, he said, eyes narrowed as if seeing something no one else could, is that they think they're normal. The words echoed long after the session ended. No official statement followed. No policy was made that day. But behind closed doors, the Concord began to shift. Every race realized they had underestimated the settlers from Earth, not because they were too powerful, but because they were powerful without trying. Humanity hadn't declared themselves a force in the galaxy. They just were. And suddenly, everyone had to decide, fear them, or stand with them. Because one thing was now very, very clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. The decision didn't come all at once, nor did it arrive with fireworks or dramatic declarations. It came slowly, quietly, like a cautious breath before a leap. After weeks of silent discussions, encrypted votes, and private consultations, the Concord finally reached a consensus. They wouldn't isolate humanity. They wouldn't push them away or label them a threat. Instead, they would do the unthinkable. They would invite them in. For the first time in centuries, an entirely new species was offered a seat at the Grand Assembly, not as an observer, but as a member. The announcement sent waves through the galaxy. Some celebrated, some protested, others simply watched with wide eyes, unsure of what came next. And at the center of it all stood Captain Amelia Ruiz, the woman who had shaken the first alien hand, who had cracked jokes during a diplomatic interview while casually mentioning near-apocalypses and duct-tape miracles. Now she stood at the heart of the most powerful political body in the known universe, her figure small compared to the towering holograms and shining alien representatives around her. But her presence filled the chamber in a way none could ignore. Ruth stepped forward calmly, wearing a plain Navy uniform with the UN insignia. No medals, no flashy tech, just her, a human. When she reached the speaking platform, the hum of languages across the chamber slowly faded. Dozens of eyes, hundreds of species, watched her in absolute silence, not with fear anymore, but with a strange mix of respect, curiosity, and something deeper, something like awe. She cleared her throat, adjusted the translator mic, and began. Hello, my name is Captain Amelia Ruiz, representing Earth and the people of the United Nations Space Division. First of all, thank you for inviting us. We're honored to be here. Her voice was steady, warm, even cheerful. No political jargon, no hidden threats, just sincerity. We understand that our presence here might feel surprising. We know we've done things differently. We've made mistakes, we've taken risks, and sometimes, we scare people. But that was never our goal. We're not here to take over anything or prove something. We're just people, doing our best. That line hit harder than any weapon ever could. For a few long seconds, the chamber was frozen in perfect stillness. A species capable of terraforming, fighting monsters with forklifts, teaching alien children to code for fun, and casually restructuring economies, calling themselves just people. Ruth smiled again, a little awkwardly this time. Honestly, we didn't expect all this attention. Back home, most folks are just trying to get through the day, fix the roof, pay bills, chase their dog when it runs into traffic. You know, the usual. Somewhere in the chamber, a sound like a chuckle escaped from a Galak delegate, a species known for never laughing. Ruse noticed, grinned, and continued. We're excited to learn from all of you. You've been here far longer than us. You've seen things we can't even imagine. And if we can share anything useful, whether it's a new way to grow food, a better code structure, or even just a good playlist, we'll be glad to. She paused, letting the words settle, because we believe in connection, in building bridges, not walls. We came from a planet that survived because people helped each other when it counted. And now, if you'll have us, we'd like to help here too. As she stepped back, there was no applause, not yet, just silence. A silence heavier than any thunder, filled with the weight of realization. Across the stars, species who once ruled unchallenged now looked at humans not as strange newcomers, but as something else entirely, something rare. A species that didn't see themselves as special, and that's what made them dangerous. Because if humans believed this was normal, then their true potential had barely begun to show. Back on Earth, news of the invitation reached home in fragments. Most people were too busy with daily life to notice at first. Someone tweeted, "Why do aliens think we're scary? Lol." Another asked if Concord membership came with free Wi-Fi. A baker in Madrid paused kneading dough to say, "We're in space politics now. That's nice," before going back to his sourdough. Earth, as always, stayed Earth, wondering why everyone in the galaxy kept staring, not realizing that the universe had just crowned its newest apex species, and the humans. They just smiled, shrugged, and kept moving forward, like they always had.